Well, on Monday we looked at Jesus as judge. We saw Jesus go into the temple and cleanse the temple. Jesus cursed the fig tree. We saw that Jesus looks beyond the external appearance of religion. He can look at the human heart and see what is the condition of our heart. Do we really know God? Do we really worship God? Do we really treasure God? We believe in Jesus. We need to let him come into our hearts and examine them and be the judge of them and expose the sin and the selfishness and the hypocrisy that's there, and allow him to transform our hearts so that they can bear genuine fruit, abiding fruit. Today, Tuesday, we want to have a look at another facet of who Jesus is and how he wants us to respond to him. And in a word, I'd summarize that as devotion. It's an account which occurred on the Saturday, as John tells us, before Jesus came into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. But the other gospel writers have put it out of its strict chronological sequence because they want to set it in stark contrast. They want to show Mary and her devotion to Christ in stark contrast to Judas and the other Jewish leaders and how they respond to Jesus. So we pick up the account in Mark chapter 14. Mark chapter 14, verse 3. While he was at Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, as he was reclining at table, a woman came with an alabaster flask of ointment of pure nard, very costly. She broke the flask and poured it over his head. There were some who said to themselves indignantly, "Why was the ointment wasted like that? For this ointment could have been sold for more than 300 denarii and given to the poor." And they scolded her. But Jesus said, "Leave her alone. Why do you trouble her? She has done a beautiful thing to me. For you always have the poor with you, and whenever you want, you can do good for them. But you will not always have me. She has done what she could. She has anointed my body beforehand for burial. And truly I say to you, wherever the gospel is proclaimed in the world, what she has done will be told in memory of her." And then Judas Iscariot, who was one of the 12, went to the chief priests in order to betray him to them. And when they heard it, they were glad and promised to give him money. And he sought an opportunity to betray him. And there you can see this act of devotion on Mary's part is put in stark contrast to Judas. Here's Mary. She comes in. She doesn't care what anyone thinks. She doesn't care what anyone says. She doesn't care how much it costs. She just wants to use this opportunity to express her love and devotion to Jesus, to tell him in some tangible way how precious he is to her. And there is Judas, the backdrop. Yeah, he's betraying Jesus for 20 pieces of silver, for money, for material gain, for personal gain. The contrast couldn't be more stark, could it? Those who really want to use Jesus for personal gain compared to those who love Jesus and are devoted to him. Mary comes in to the room, and she takes this flask of ointment, as verse 3 says there, pure nard, very costly. It was worth 300 denarii, basically 300 days' wages, a year's wages. Could have been used to support a family for a year. And she takes this flask and she breaks the head of it off, and she doesn't just pour a few little drops. I mean, normally you would have saved this for your wedding day or some special occasion, and you would use it sparingly. You would just use a few little drops to create a pleasant smell in a room. But yeah, she just pours this all out on Jesus and anoints his head and his body, and there's complete devotion here. There's lavish, extravagant worship here. She doesn't care. She probably would have been saving this for a wedding day. She doesn't care. She seizes the moment. She sees the opportunity, and this is her opportunity to pour out her most precious saving on Jesus, just to show him how much she loves him. And obviously many are looking at this and saying, this was a waste. What a waste. This could have been sold and given to the poor. There were much better, wiser ways to use this than to waste it in this way. In a few moments, this is all just poured out. And what does it amount to? And Jesus makes an incredible statement. He says in verse 6 there, she's done a beautiful thing to me. And the word there really means beautiful in an ethical sense. She's done what is beautiful, what is excellent, what is right, what is good, what God would regard as good. Now think about this for a moment. What this tells us about the person of Jesus Christ. If this was any ordinary man, then such wastage surely wouldn't be right. It wouldn't be right to waste all of this on one man, on a few moments of pleasure on one man. And yet when it comes to Jesus, no sacrifice is too great. There's nothing that is not worth pouring out in worship of him because of who he is, because he's that worthy, because he's that magnificent. He's worthy of everything. And Jesus could say, you know, you're always going to have the poor, but you won't always have this moment, this opportunity to express such lavish devotion. And it's done at an opportune time. He says, she's preparing my body for burial beforehand. This is, as it were, Jesus' anointing after his burial. Instead of the ointments and the spices being put on his dead body, it's being done now for everyone to see. It tells us that Jesus knew he was going to die. The cross didn't take him by surprise. But Jesus can say, he's worthy of this kind of worship, this kind of sacrifice. And Mary has had the privilege of being able to express this. And that's why Jesus says, wherever the gospel is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will be told in memory of her. And it's not about Mary. We're not even told her name here. We wouldn't even know her name if it wasn't for John's account. It's not about Mary, it's about her devotion to Christ. She exemplifies what Jesus is looking for in those who believe in him. Complete devotion, complete willingness to sacrifice and pour out our lives for him because he's worthy. There's nothing that he's not worthy of. This is what it means to believe in Jesus. This is what it means to be devoted to him. Are you one of those who use Jesus for personal gain, who are happy to follow Jesus externally as long as he gives you what you want? Are you among those who pour out your life to make much of him, to show people that he's worthy? Are you willing to give him anything and everything because he's worthy? That's what Jesus is looking for. And that's why the gospel, as it's proclaimed, the message of what Jesus has done for us, as that message goes out into all the world, along with that message goes the message that Jesus is worth our everything because he gave his everything to gain back for himself a people ready to proclaim his glory.